Hello. Today I am going to talk to you about my midlife crisis and how I knew it was time for me to move to France. And I'm going to take you through the process because you might be in a place where you know you're ready for a big change, but there might be something holding you back. And you're going to be able to, after watching this video, understand like the 3 major points in a midlife crisis before you take the leap and how you can move through that fear, that self-doubt, so that you can finally do the thing that you feel so called to, but are unable to do on your own. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Patricia Brooks, and in 2018, I decided it was time for me to leave my project management job in Richmond, Virginia, get on a plane, and move to the south of France. Right? Something that I'd been thinking about and dreaming about for the 3 years prior. But it was a long process to get me to that place where I was ready to take a chance on myself. And in this video, I am going to tackle those 3 major points in my midlife crisis, and help you to understand where you might be so that you can take the next steps so that you can keep moving forward and feel more empowered than you might feel at the present moment. All right? And this is going to be a ride-along video. So as I share my insights with you, be sure to enjoy the view. My midlife crisis started probably around age 43. It's right after my dad passed away. And that was a big aha moment for me. That was when I realized that, I don't have forever to live the kind of life that I want to live. And I started to recognize that I was living somebody else's life. And I was married at the time, and that was a wake-up call that maybe I shouldn't be married to this person, and that led me to filing for divorce. And that was the start of my midlife crisis, right? And it was crisis because things weren't the way that I wanted them, and I needed to fix things or make things a little bit better before I could move through that and into a place where I could figure out what my next steps were, what my true path was. And so in 2010, my dad died. In 2011, I started the process to file for divorce, and that was a turbulent time. Started a new job and wasn't feeling respected. And so I was going through a lot of different things. But in all of that, I recognized that I needed to get a handle on some things. I recognized that I needed to take my life back. So the filing for the divorce was the one thing that started the whole thing. But I also, after I got the divorce, or as I was going through the process of getting a divorce, I recognized that my job, which was a contract job that paid very, very well, was not giving me the recognition or the appreciation that I thought I deserved. And that was very frustrating, or the challenging work that I was looking for. And so I sought out a challenge, and I decided I was going to lose some weight. And that's what led me to start Weight Watchers and lose 75 pounds. So here it is, I'm going through crisis. I'm cleaning up some things in my life. And I get to a point where I am out of debt, because that was another thing I needed to clean up. And that crisis started to subside. My dad died in 2010. 3 years later, my mom died after I took care of her for about 6 months, going back and forth to Willingboro, New Jersey from Richmond, Virginia, the 5-hour car ride every other weekend. And then finally in August of 2013, being with her by her side when she died. And a year after that was when that crisis started to diminish, and I started to move into a different phase. And that phase was more of a midlife awakening. I'd settled some things, I'd gotten some things straightened in my life. And at that 1-year anniversary of my mom's death, I realized that, you know what? I can live this life on my own without the support, without the moral support of a living parent. Because that was the thing that I felt I wouldn't be able to do. And so that was an awakening. That made me feel like, oh, well, I don't have to be in their shadows. And some of the things that they may have said, maybe I don't necessarily have to take them to heart. Maybe I can do something different. And so this period, this awakening was a period of exploration, taking karate, traveling by myself. I went to Quebec City, Canada for the first time, and that's where I started to fall in love with the French language, and then started to travel alone to Europe. And on my second trip to France, I found the place that I wanted to live. And so that shifted some things. I wasn't really sure what was next for me. I knew that my job was something that I didn't want to do for the rest of my life, but I didn't know what I wanted. But going to France that second time, finding Perpignan and feeling like, oh, this feels like the place I need to be, gave me a purpose and a vision for my future. And so that was the thing that started to really be in my consciousness. I wanted to live in France. And I'd go on vacations there, come back to work, and less than 24 hours later, I was back on the job, and it felt like I'd never even left. And I was back into the grind, and I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. And I wanted this thing. I wanted to live in France, but you know what? I really didn't believe it was possible for me, because the only thing that I was doing was studying French. I wasn't cleaning out my house. I wasn't figuring out how much I needed to move, to support myself to move there. There were certain things I just wasn't doing because, well, I didn't believe it was really possible. So why am I going to waste the energy? And that all changed. That's the second phase, that awakening phase of starting to explore and figure out certain things you like and you don't like, and maybe what it is you want to do in your next chapter. And then I wanted this thing, but I felt so disillusioned and disempowered to be able to make it happen. And so that was frustrating. That was something that didn't feel good. I was going into this job, as I said, that I didn't like. I was no longer able to get to my quick fix of going to Quebec City, Canada, because all of a sudden those flights and that flight pattern were different, and it would take me 2 layovers to get there when it had only taken me 1 before. And my not being a big traveler and not liking the process of traveling, that made me stop going to Canada. And France was a little ways away, so I couldn't just go there on a weekend. And so that really started me feeling like, I really want to be in France. And that, like I said, that disillusionment and feeling disempowered to be able to make it happen. So what changed? How did I know it was time for me to move abroad? And how was I able to finally make that leap? Well, this third phase in this midlife crisis process was about taking the leap, or maybe sometimes it's being pushed. And I think I had a little bit of a nudge. I don't think I was pushed, but I feel like there was a nudge that helped me to get out of that awakening phase and into that decision and leaping phase. And that was, we had an election in 2016. And the election was, I think, a wake-up call for a lot of people. But for me, I initially was hopeful. I thought that perhaps this newly elected president would become presidential and things would be okay. But in January of 2017, I recognized that I was a little bit naive about that. And my disillusionment with my situation, being at a job I didn't like, being in a city that I was no longer happy with, and thinking, well, there's really no place else in the United States that I wanted to go. France was one I wanted to go, and feeling stuck, feeling disempowered to do anything about it, made me say, okay, I really want this thing. And where I am is starting to feel very, very uncomfortable, even though it's easy because I know what my life is going to be like day in, day out. It was becoming very uncomfortable. And that was when I hired a coach to get unstuck, because obviously I wasn't moving my plans forward or my dreams forward because I really didn't have a plan. Hired a coach. She was not a coach who helped people move abroad. She helped one other person move to Italy for a couple of years. I saw an article about it. I reached out to her. I hired her. And that worked because what I had was an internal block. And it was an internal block around money. It was an internal block around figuring out how much I needed to move abroad. And the reason it was internal was because I was afraid to look at my finances to see what I would need to have in order to move to France for at least 1 year. And I didn't do that in a year or 18 months of wanting to move to France. But when she said, okay, well, that's your homework assignment, I said, okay. And because I honor my word, that following session, I came back armed with the information and pleasantly surprised. And that was the thing that started to help me to make the leap. It was, before I didn't believe it was possible for me to move to France. Now I see that in my bank account, in my emergency fund, I had enough to live in France for at least 2 years, maybe 3 if I was very frugal. It started to feel a little bit more possible. However, I still had a block, and it was a money block because this money was in my emergency fund. So after having that session with my coach, a few days later, I was speaking with a coach friend of mine and told her, well, yeah, I really want to move to France and I have the money, but the money's in this emergency fund. And how can I use this money to move to France? Because this money is set aside in case there is an emergency. My dad had told me that, you should have an emergency fund. If something goes wrong with the house, you want to be able to cover that. If your car breaks down, you want to be able to pay for that. If you have a medical emergency, you want to be able to deal with that and not have to scramble about that. And so I listened, and after I got out of debt in 2011 or so, I started throwing the money I was paying to credit cards to this emergency fund. And so I had amassed quite a bit and hadn't touched it because, I didn't really ever have this huge emergency. And so for me to touch that, just to move to France, felt frivolous. But my friend Umbretta said to me, and she's a coach, she said, well, yeah, I hear you. You want to do this thing. You have the money to do it, but you don't feel like you should do it because, this doesn't seem like an emergency to you. And she said to me something that I will never forget, and it was the thing that really got me to France. And that was, so you're in a situation where you're really not happy, and you know that France is the place that you want to be. What if your move to France is the emergency, right? She said it. She didn't have to say anything more. And I was like, oh. And I have to say that I don't know what my life would look and feel like now if I had not gotten on that plane 6 years ago to move to France. If I was still living at my house in Richmond, Virginia, my very comfortable house in Richmond, Virginia, if I was still going into my job, what my life would look and feel like. But I have to say, at that point, 6 years ago, I had been over it for 2 years. So doing that thing that I didn't want to do for another 6 years and thinking that my state of mental health would be as good as it is where I am today is hard to imagine. And so I do believe that my move to France was the emergency. And that's the thing that got me to leap. That's the thing that got me to do all of the hard work of applying for a visa and cleaning out my house and finding a property manager and getting on that plane and being lonely those first months and feeling afraid like I'd made a mistake. All of that, it helped me move through that. And so those were the 3 stages of my midlife crisis. The crisis part of trying to get my life in order because I'd been following somebody else's path, and that had led me into debt and being overweight and maybe getting into a marriage that really wasn't suited for me, untangling that, but then going through the midlife awakening portion of it, the crisis, where I'm exploring and trying to figure out what I want and happening on this French language that drew me to France. And then finally getting that confidence and courage and the gumption to actually get on a plane and move. And that was the combination of starting to believe that it was possible because, I could see a path forward because of my coach, but also recognizing that I could actually use the money that was earmarked for an emergency for this thing that seemed like maybe it was just an adventure and not an emergency. So I share this to say that if you've got this idea that you want to move to a foreign country, be it France or some other country, and you are feeling yourself not doing the things that are required to make it happen for you, and you're starting to feel so disillusioned and so disempowered by the idea that, oh, well, maybe it's not possible for you, or by the idea that maybe this is not something that you deserve to do because there's so many other people in the world who may be struggling or might not be able to do this thing, then I challenge you to figure out where you are on this path, on this midlife. I call it a midlife crisis path, but you could be younger. You could be having a quarter life crisis. Are you in that place where you really need to clean up some things so that you can be on firm ground, so that you can then start exploring and figuring out the things you like and the things you don't like? Because a lot of times if we have to clean up some things, it's because maybe we've gone down a path that wasn't our path because, well, that's what we were taught to do. And then are you in that place where you've already done the cleanup, where you already know what you want, and you are just struggling to and feeling so disempowered to be able to make anything happen, that it's time to talk to somebody who can help you get unstuck. And if that's the case, if you are in that place where you have been aching to live abroad and you've been doing what you can on your own and you have not been able to get out of the mindset of, oh, is this possible for me? How can I do this? Oh, how can I leave people behind? Then it's time to have a conversation with somebody who can get you unstuck. And the reason that I created my program, which is called the Carefree Expat Incubator Program for single women who are just like me, who have gone through this process and get to a place where they're stuck, is because it feels so good to be on the other side of that. And now I know it's possible. And I have the skills, having gone through coach training, to help people move through that. And the program is set up not only to help you to create a vision for your new life, to help you move through some of those blocks and create new beliefs that are more empowering, but also to help you create and work through a plan so that you can finally live in your dream country. There's also the group coaching and mentoring calls that happen weekly, where you can get on a call. And if you're feeling stuck about some action you need to take toward your new life abroad, you get on a call, we talk through it, you get a plan to move through it, and you keep on going, right? Other women are on the call too. So they're working through other things that maybe you're not even considering. And you have some insights that, oh, I need to care for this as well. You also may need accountability in cleaning out your house, in learning a new language, in doing the tasks that need to get done that are sometimes hard. And those calls can be used for that as well. And so if this program sounds like something that would help you get to your dream country sooner and with more ease, it's time for us to have a conversation. So you can go to thecouragecatalyst.com/future expat for your complimentary session where we can see where you are, where it is you want to be, why you want to be there, what things might be holding you back, and if our working together will help you move through this more seamlessly. All right. I am so happy to have shared my path with you, because it's not always clear where somebody is on the path or what has created the impetus for somebody to actually take that leap, that big leap of faith to do something that was so unimaginable before. But I did it and I worked through it, and I believe you can do it too. So let's have that conversation and get you to where you need to be. All right. So hopefully you found this video helpful, informative. Hopefully you may see some things in you, in my story. And if that's the case, give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, comment on it, and I will see you again next time. Bye for now.